Battle 360. USS Enterprise was savaged by terrible bomb hits in the Battle of the Eastern Solomons, her worst battle damage yet. Now it's a race to get her repaired and back to sea. The Japanese would love to get another shot at sinking the Big E. USS Enterprise, a fighting city of steel. She is the most revered and decorated ship of World War II. On this 360-degree battlefield, where threats loom on the seas, in the skies, and in the ocean depths, the Enterprise's enemies could be anywhere and everywhere. There's nowhere to run when the battle's all around you. Battle 360, USS Enterprise, Bloody Santa Cruz. This series is brought to you with limited commercials by the men and women of Enterprise Rent-A-Car. October 26, 1942. 2 months after a severe baptism of fire near Guadalcanal, USS Enterprise is once again at sea, heading for a showdown with the Japanese fleet. 8:30 a.m. Enterprise dive bomber pilots Charles Irvine and Stockton Strong are on the hunt for the Japanese fleet. Their mission, find an enemy carrier force in the waters off the Santa Cruz Islands and report its location back to Enterprise. It's the same strategy still being used by today's carrier fleets.
The F-14s we would send out on long radials away from the carrier looking for targets. And if you hit something with your radar, you would just relay that information back to the ship because you were just a solo guy out there. You weren't going to be able to do any kind of, prosecution. You were just out there really for detection more than anything.
But these bomber pilots have something else in mind. 13,000 feet below, the giant flight decks of 4 Japanese flat tops appear out of the morning haze. They are Shikaku, Zuikaku, Junyo, and Zuiho. They're literally within striking distance of the Big E. Enterprise is outnumbered. The pilots are right over the Zuiho, an ideal spot to hit her with 500-pound bombs, a perfect target of opportunity, and there isn't a single enemy Zero in sight. If the lone airman can hit her badly enough, it could help even the odds. It's a risky move for only 2 warplanes. Even without air cover, the Zuiho is a well-armed enemy. It wouldn't take much to knock Strong and Irvine out of the sky. But their commander has told them, attack, repeat, attack. The gutsy pilots brave a sky torn with flak and pounce on the carrier Zuiho. At 1,500 feet, they let loose with their 500-pound explosives. The bombs nail Zuiho's flight deck.
And each of them planted a 500-pounder right smack on top of that sucker and set him on fire.
Now, with 2 holes in her deck, the enemy carrier will be unable to land or launch any of her aircraft. She's been put out of business. On their own, Strong and Irvine has struck the first knockout punch in the Battle of the Santa Cruz Islands. Carrier Zuiho is out of the fight. But it's the Japanese that strike the next blow. Before Enterprise pilots could discover the Japanese carriers, the enemy has already launched bombers and torpedo planes. Now, a massive airstrike storms towards the American task force. Enterprise will soon be in the fight of her life. Flashback, almost 2 months earlier. September 1942. Enterprise rests in the repair dry docks at Pearl Harbor. She's been crippled by 3 direct hits in the Solomons that have torn her flight deck and destroyed a battery of 5-inch guns. Now, repair crews swarm over her, working night and day to get the blistered ship back into fighting condition.
The hangar deck was all ripped up back in the stern. and big steel 2.5 inches thick, just folded back like a piece of paper.
Right now, the U.S. can't afford to lose a single carrier, not even for a few weeks. Damaged Enterprise and sister USS Hornet are now the only battle-ready carriers that the Pacific Fleet has left. 2 U.S. carriers against 7 Japanese flat tops. In the months after Pearl Harbor, America is still struggling in the wake of the Great Depression. There simply aren't enough guns, enough ships, or enough airplanes.
If you look at the American material situation in the depths of the Guadalcanal campaign, we were really scraping the bottom of the barrel. We were fighting these battles without any of the material superiority that we would enjoy in 1944, 1945.
While Enterprise undergoes repairs, the long campaign for Guadalcanal continues. Marines have struggled for weeks to hold on to Guadalcanal's Henderson Field, the most valuable airstrip in the South Pacific. It can provide a vital airbase for whichever force controls it. The Marines seized it 6 weeks ago, and the Japanese want it back. Japan's target, Henderson Field. Objective, annihilate the U.S. forces that hold Guadalcanal. Strategy, storm the island with ground troops, while sending the Imperial Navy to Santa Cruz to destroy USS Enterprise and USS Hornet. The Japanese know that the waters off the Santa Cruz Islands lie in the direct path of any U.S. fleet bound for Guadalcanal. They plan to cut them off at the pass. Back at Pearl, the fight to get Enterprise up and running continues. During her hasty refit, Enterprise receives an important modification: new guns. She is stripped of all but one of her outdated Quad 1.1 anti-aircraft mounts. Sailors jokingly call these weapons Chicago pianos, a nickname typically used for the Tommy gun that ruled the streets of Chicago in the 1920s. Only one set of the slow-firing cannons will remain on the front of the ship, but the exposed position is right out in the open, a dangerous death trap for its gunners. Unlike the battleships, there are no turret shields to protect Enterprise's gun crews. As 1.1s are pulled from the ship, Enterprise gets a brand new set of the latest anti-aircraft weapon in the arsenal, the 40mm Bofors. With a rate of fire of 160 rounds per minute versus 150 for the Chicago piano, the 40mm projectile is more than double the weight of the 1.1 and has nearly twice the maximum range.
The 40mm Bofors weapon is, by far, the most effective anti-aircraft weapon introduced on U.S. Navy aircraft carriers to that date. It's a weapon that could accelerate those projectiles up to about 2,800 feet per second. They had about a 4.5-mile range.
Unlike 1942, today's modern carriers rely on a complex system of radar-guided air defense that ensure accurate fire and a definite kill.
Back then, without a real guidance system, we just tried to put as much junk up in the air as possible and hope that we'd hit something.
Armed with 4 of the new quad-mount 40mm cannons, Enterprise will have a better chance of pounding an enemy bomber before it delivers a hellish payload. While Enterprise prepares for the journey back to Guadalcanal, she takes on a batch of pilots fresh from flight school. Texan Bruce McGraw has just completed his training. Enterprise is his first carrier assignment.
My mother had wanted me to be a doctor, and my dad had wanted me to be a minister, and I didn't want to be either one. So here I am, a dive bomber pilot on the Enterprise. I felt like I was as safe as you were going to be. They were capable. They were fighters. They were warriors. They were experienced. They were good people. And it was a real brotherhood, and you became part of it, and you were glad to be there.
Another pilot is Donald Gordon of Fighting Squadron 10. In little more than 2 years, he's gone from a farm in Kansas to the flight deck on USS Enterprise.
When I got to Fighting 10, the skipper says, "What's your nickname?" I said, "Curly." I did have curly dark hair at that time. And he said, "That won't sound very good over the radio. How about Flash?" And I've been Flash Gordon ever since.
October 15, 1942. Finally repaired and rearmed, Enterprise stands out at Pearl Harbor. She bristles from stem to stern with anti-aircraft guns and carries her patched holes like battle scars.
It's miraculous to consider the extensive bomb damage from the 3 hits and the near miss at Eastern Solomons, that with about a month's work, she was reintroduced to the battle and comes back actually stronger than ever.
Enterprise is back in the fight, ready to wreak vengeance on the enemy. But she's not alone. As always, CV-6 will be joined by a fleet of escorts, battleships, cruisers, and destroyers. Joining the fight alongside Enterprise for the first time is Norm Vincent of Gardner, Massachusetts, aboard USS Smith.
I had just turned 18 when we engaged in the Battle of Santa Cruz. I was about 56 days into my 18th year. I felt that we couldn't get to the West Coast fast enough and the war would be over, but it was a little different story.
Unlike the eager recruits, veterans on the battle-wise Enterprise already know what to expect after the horrors of the Eastern Solomons. For men that have had to bury the mangled bodies of friends and shipmates, the haunting images of battle are hard to forget.
For the Marines and sailors aboard the USS Enterprise, if they get hit, they want it to be quick, because they do not want to lay there in agony and pain.
Everybody was scared. And it's not a very pleasant thing to having bombs dropped on you. And of course, I'm sure the Japanese didn't like it either.
Everyone knows a battle is just beyond the horizon, but each man is ready to face whatever the Japanese can throw at them.
I thought, let's get it over with. There was no fear about it. If we're going to be fighting Japs, a good Jap is a dead Jap.
3,300 miles from Pearl Harbor, Enterprise rendezvous with sister carrier USS Hornet. The mighty carriers form one massive new task force, TF-61, under the command of Admiral Thomas Kincaid. Kincaid is a hard-fighting New England native, veteran of World War I and an expert in gunnery. He's the perfect choice to lead Enterprise's task force into battle. Together, the two ships have seen a lot of action. They're about to see a lot more. The combined force of the two carriers, 136 aircraft, a battleship, 6 cruisers, and 14 destroyers rallies in preparation for the coming battle. Target, the Santa Cruz Islands. Objective, keep Henderson Field on Guadalcanal in American hands. Strategy, lure the Japanese fleet away from Guadalcanal and destroy them. But Enterprise and Hornet are outnumbered and outgunned.
The Japanese bring 4 aircraft carriers into the battle, 2 battleships, and then all the supporting ships. And so, in yet another naval battle, American forces are at the disadvantage in terms of numerical superiority. The Japanese have it, and we don't.
The Japanese flat tops can deliver the punch of more than 150 warplanes, with the backup firepower of nearly 40 surface vessels. But if the Marines are going to hold Guadalcanal, they'll need naval support. They'll need USS Enterprise. The fate of the campaign now rests on Enterprise and an outnumbered American task force.
We don't pick our battles based on odds. Sometimes the battles pick you. We certainly don't run from a battle based on being outnumbered. You adapt your tactics to the scenarios at hand. But we don't run from a fight. And we didn't then.
As Hornet and Enterprise steam for Santa Cruz, enemy forces attack U.S. positions around Henderson Field.
However, the Army was not able to deliver the goods against the Marines. They were not able to crack the defensive perimeter and actually put that airfield out of business.
But because of bad communication, the commanders of the Imperial fleet incorrectly believe that their army has taken Henderson, so they head south to meet the Americans at Santa Cruz. October 26, 1942, 5:50 a.m., Enterprise goes to general quarters. She launches 16 dauntless SBDs to patrol the sea and seek out the enemy. Each plane carries a 500-pound bomb under her belly. Objective: find the Japanese before they find Enterprise. Strategy: the bombers will search a 200-mile vector for the enemy warships. 85 miles from Enterprise. Bruce McGraw and Warren Welch of Bombing 10 are the first Enterprise flyers to meet the Japanese. They discover a menacing formation of enemy surface ships, and they're headed right for the American carriers. It's the Vanguard Force, the first line of Imperial battleships, cruisers, and destroyers. Suddenly, the enemy gunners open fire.
The air was full of puffy, black little clouds, and they were exploding shells from long-range anti-aircraft shells, and I was kind of in the middle of a patch-up.
Welch and McGraw pull out of a storm of flak and head back for Enterprise. But other Big E airmen continue the hunt for the Japanese carriers. 100 miles away is the carrier Zuiho. This is the moment where Enterprise pilots Stockton Strong and Charles Irvine deliver their brutal punch to the enemy flat top. Now, Enterprise and Hornet are only up against 3 enemy carriers. But the Japanese carriers have already launched a major airstrike. Back at Task Force 61, radar operators report a massive Japanese air group headed right for them. The carriers steam in 2 tight circles, 10 miles apart. Their battleships, cruisers, and destroyers close by. Just as the Japanese air attack closes in on Task Force 61, Enterprise enters the cover of a rain squall. The concealment of the low clouds will keep the Japanese from finding the Big E. For the moment, she's safe. Hornet is not so lucky. 20,000 feet above the American ships, the enemy strike closes in on carrier Hornet. The pilots that attack Hornet at Santa Cruz are among the finest in the Imperial Navy, veterans of Pearl Harbor and Midway. These Japanese airmen are literally the last of their kind.
The air attack that's delivered against Hornet is one of the finer examples of a combined air attack. In fact, it would be the last of the sort of prototypical combined attacks that the Japanese were able to do during the entire war.
The skies above USS Hornet are clouded with a storm of Japanese aircraft. From his battle station on the starboard 5-inch battery, Earl Miller has a front row seat to the enemy assault.
I saw some silver aircraft going over, and ours weren't silver, ours were blue. All the ships in the group all opened fire. Things really happened from that moment on.
21 Val dive bombers and 27 Kate torpedo planes plummet out of the skies and pour down on Hornet. American ships open up on the armada of Japanese aircraft and blanket the sky with bursts of 5 and 1.1-inch shells. 3,000 yards behind Hornet, cruiser Northampton and her crew of tested veterans plow through the wake directly behind the carrier.
We could see the dive bombers coming in probably up 15, 20,000 feet. And as you could start picking them out, because when they got down to around 15,000 feet, they were within range of the 5-inch 38 batteries.
As the battle rages all around, Northampton waits to open fire. Her short-range, 5-inch 25 caliber anti-aircraft guns just don't have the reach to hammer the enemy planes. Tense moments pass as her gunners await their orders.
There's this agonizing wait. It's like the don't shoot till you see the whites of their eyes.
Finally, the enemy planes drop down within range. Northampton opens up with everything she's got.
So we started firing as soon as they got in range, and then you can see shell bursts actually begin to take effect, and occasionally you'll see a plane get hit and come down in a streak of fire.
5,000 feet above Hornet, the Vows begin their deadly assault.
I looked straight up and I saw there was a dive bomber coming straight down. And as I watched him, I saw the bomb detach from the bottom of the plane. I said, oh, I hope this one's not for us.
At the last possible second, it misses the ship and explodes in the water. But not all of the Japanese Vows have such bad aim. The next pilot is dead on. A bomb nails Hornet's flight deck and scatters shrapnel across the ship. Enterprise's sister shakes from stem to stern. Nearly 60 men below decks perish within an instant of the savage explosion. The lucky ones never know what hits them. Now, torpedo pilots attack Hornet from the rear, drawing them into a gauntlet of fire. But it doesn't stop them. They're hell-bent on hitting the racing carrier. At that same moment, another dive bomber lines up for an attack. As it closes in on Hornet, it's met with a ferocious volley of fire. But it keeps on coming. The bomber pushes into a nosedive. Seconds later, it smashes right into the stack of USS Hornet. The plane bounces off the ship's island and crashes into the flight deck in a ball of mangled, twisted steel. 7 men aboard Hornet are killed instantly. The suicide plane has scorched the tripod signal mast and has left a wing jammed in the smoke funnel. Aviation fuel burns through the flight deck. And the nightmare is only beginning. 2 torpedo planes survive the rapid fire of the task force guns. They come in from the southeast, release their torpedoes, and blow 15-foot holes in the Hornet's hull. Hornet loses all power and comes to a halt. She's a sitting duck, the perfect target for the next Japanese torpedo or dive bomber. She doesn't have to wait long for the next brutal blow. Another burning Vow closes in on the listing carrier. Her crew watches as the smoking bomber passes eerily around the bow and comes screaming in from the port side. For the second time this day, Hornet is the victim of a suicide attacker. 10 miles away, USS Enterprise emerges from the cover of the rain squall she entered 20 minutes before. Every man topside can see the smoke rising from Hornet, and instantly the crew of Enterprise knows what this means. The Big E and her escorts might be all that's left to defend Guadalcanal. And with every other U.S. carrier dead or damaged, Enterprise may become the only battle-ready carrier left in the Pacific. Now, Hornet's pilots have no choice but to land on Enterprise. By 10:30 a.m., her flight deck is jammed with aircraft from both ships.
There was about 150 airplanes involved there. Counting the ones that we lost, we still couldn't take them all aboard. So we filled up pretty quick, and then anything that was really damaged went over the side. That was a lot.
If Admiral Kincaid is going to continue the fight against the Japanese fleet, the planes landing aboard Enterprise will have to get rearmed and refueled. And with the deck loaded with aviation fuel and bombs, Enterprise is now an explosive target. She'll have to launch the air groups fast or risk getting blown to pieces. But in a few minutes, an overcrowded flight deck will be the last of the crew's concerns. Another Japanese air assault is on its way. Imperial warplanes have managed to knock out one American carrier. Now it's time to unleash hell upon the Enterprise. 18,000 feet below, radar operators on Enterprise report a flight of incoming Japanese dive bombers. Her captain directs the ship into a left turn, an erratic course to deflect the enemy planes. For many of the Big E's pilots, it's too late to launch. They're trapped aboard the Enterprise. Anti-aircraft batteries open fire as 25 dive bombers plunge out of the sky and head right for USS Enterprise.
The anti-aircraft guns of the fleet just laid a terrific barrage of anti-aircraft fire up and knocked so many of them down.
Bruce McGraw and the men below decks can judge the distance of the incoming attacks by the changing sounds of Enterprise's guns. As the Japanese get closer, a different weapon opens fire.
When our 5-inch anti-aircraft guns went off, which is the big boom, well, we knew they were in range of the long-range guns. Then when the 40 millimeters started going off, then we knew the Jap planes were getting closer to us. And then when the 20 millimeters started going off, we knew we were pretty close to where we could get hit.
As the planes come in closer, the new 40-millimeter Bofors are about to be put to the test and open up with venomous accuracy. Enemy bombers are ripped apart as they fly straight into the face of the solid steel nightmare. One smoking Val dive bomber bears down on the Big E's deck. At the last moment, Enterprise heels over into a sharp left turn. The plane hits the water. Its bomb explodes in a shower of deadly debris. More planes vector in from 12,000 feet, but gunners on Enterprise's batteries fire away for all they're worth, destroying 5 enemy dive bombers with punishing fire. Sheets of lead fill the air, but it's not enough.
Our little fighters and our anti-aircraft guns from our ship and all the protecting ships just couldn't get them all.
As Enterprise turns, she opens herself up to another dive bomber. Before the gunners can react, it's too late. The plane releases a 550-pound bomb right over Enterprise. The bomb penetrates through the flight deck and out the portside bow. A Dauntless parked on the flight deck is blown off the ship and into the sea. Shrapnel hits the hull like a shotgun blast. 2,500 feet above, another Val dive bomber closes in and draws a bead on the Big E. The Val faces a firestorm of American flak and drops its payload. The direct hit penetrates the flight deck just behind the forward elevator and splits in two. Half of the bomb explodes in the hangar deck, destroying anything in its path. The second half hammers through to the third deck and kills 34 men in the very heart of the ship. Seconds later, a near miss tears a 50-foot scar in Enterprise's hull below the waterline and opens her starboard fuel tanks to the sea. The Big E now streams a blood trail of oil in her wake that the Japanese are sure to follow. The entire enemy attack on Enterprise has taken only minutes. Surviving bombers pull out of the deadly airspace, their ranks decimated by American firepower. 15,000 feet above, several enemy aircraft run right into Wildcat pilots from Fighting Squadron 10 of Enterprise. One of these Enterprise pilots is the veteran sharpshooting ace from Montana, Swede Vedasa. He's determined to avenge the attack on Enterprise, protect his ship, and kill the enemy pilots. Swede will try to move in behind and below the enemy flyers, aim for the fuel tanks, and knock them down one by one.
I went down and there were 4 planes, 3 in formation, and a 4th one just to the left.
Swede gets below the first dive bomber and opens fire with 4 of his 50 caliber guns.
Immediate fire. Guy peeled off, blows. I moved up under the other 3. Same thing, I'm underneath them.
One by one, Swede destroys the 4 enemy dive bombers for their attack on his ship.
We tend to put aggressive guys in cockpits. And I don't want to say that we think we're invincible. But to say that our chest sticks out pretty far, I think would be accurate.
Back on Enterprise, pilot Bruce McGraw makes his way to a first aid station and volunteers to help the wounded.
I went in and immediately went to one of the doctors that I knew, and I said, "Is there anything I can do to help?" He said, "Well, go sit by that sailor right there and talk to him and ask him if there's anything you can do for him." The man was a bad burn victim, I could tell that, and he kept asking for morphine. And so I got up, went over and told the doctor, I said, he wants morphine. And he says, "Well, he's had all that we can give him, but he has less than 10 minutes to live, so just do what you can." So I went back, and he gradually leaned over against me, and he was gone.
While the Big E's wounded fight to survive, the savage air and sea battle rages on all sides. Now that the dive bombers have had their shot at Enterprise, it's time for the dreaded torpedo planes. 16 Kate torpedo planes head right for Enterprise. Within minutes, they will have the Big E dead in their sights.
And whichever way we turned, they were going to get us, so they thought.
It's a classic hammer and anvil assault. 8 Kates will attack from starboard, while 8 more come around the port side. If everything goes to plan, Enterprise will have nowhere to run. But any Japanese air group making an assault on an American carrier can expect a squadron of determined fighter planes. One thing the enemy torpedo pilots attacking the Big E don't expect is Lieutenant Stanley Swede Vedasa of Fighting Squadron 10.
Here come a torpedo plane, and right in front of me.
Swede moves underneath the first Kate torpedo plane and opens fire. The enemy plane is hit with hot lead and burns, but keeps on going. Swede has precious few bursts of .50 caliber ammo left as he chases the Kate right into the flak of Enterprise. At any moment, he could be blasted out of the sky by his own comrades.
I thought if he goes any farther, I'll have to give him my last burst of ammo. Well, he got down right over the water, he dug in a wing and cartwheeled.
Now that the enemy plane is down, Swede must climb out fast or risk the friendly fire from the carrier he's trying to save. As Swede climbs above the deadly flak bursts, he spots yet another torpedo plane, and it's headed right for USS Enterprise.
I knew I had a few rounds left, and I did. And I fired those last few rounds, and immediately he caught on fire. But he kept going, and he kept going.
Peppered by Swede's .50 caliber rounds, the Kate shows no signs of giving up.
But I'm right behind him, and this is the time I seriously considered cutting his tail off with my prop. And I thought, I don't know if this is a good idea or not.
Suddenly, the torpedo plane does something that nobody can predict. It makes a nosedive right in front of Swede. It's headed right for the American ships. Directly below the firefight in the skies is destroyer escort USS Smith. USS Smith has been on station all morning, screening Enterprise. Its mission, protect the massive carrier at all costs. Commissioned in 1936, USS Smith is a Mahan-class destroyer. Her overall length, 341 feet. Top speed, 37 knots. She has a crew of about 158 officers and men. She's armed with a battery of 5 5-inch guns, .50 caliber machine guns, torpedo tubes, and depth charges. Like most of the older destroyers in the fleet, Smith is affectionately called a tin can. But now, the Japanese suicide plane has the tin can destroyer locked dead in its sights.
And I watched him, I pulled off to the right, and I watched him, and he went into a vertical dive, and he hit that destroyer, which was the Smith.
When the plane hit the front of our destroyer, and the destroyer dipped like it would hit a big wave. then all of a sudden, the whole front end was ablaze.
In an instant, the entire forward 5-inch battery on USS Smith is blown apart, killing every gunner. She loses control and turns hard to starboard. Enterprise is forced to heel from her zigzag course to keep from slamming into her. But what the crew of USS Smith doesn't know is that the Japanese plane's torpedo somehow survived the crash, and it's still armed and ready to detonate. 400 yards from USS Smith, the battle-weary crew of Enterprise faces the remains of a fierce hammer and anvil assault by the Japanese torpedo planes. One by one, they come in low and release their warheads. 3 torpedoes splash into the water ahead of Enterprise. Anxiously, nearly every man watching waits for the collision of the warheads.
And the captain did some pretty deft maneuvering. Those 3 torpedoes slid to the stern of the ship on our port side, so close that you couldn't look over the side and hardly see them.
800 yards ahead, another torpedo splashes as a cape drops its payload. The captain orders a full right rudder as the torpedo closes in on the carrier. As the guilty plane pulls out of its release, all that stands in the way of escape is the old Chicago piano, the last of the antiquated 1.1-inch guns on Enterprise. Will it have the firepower to get the job done? The 1.1 roars into action. It's in a perfect spot to protect Enterprise one last time. It savages the enemy plane with a lethal dose of lead. For these sons of the Empire, the blazing Chicago piano is the last sight they'll ever see. The captain watches as the torpedo swims right past his ship, barely 100 feet away. It's another close call.
We evaded them all. That ship of ours could turn sharply. She'd lean way over, boy, you thought we were going over, but she could evade.
In all, Enterprise dodges 9 torpedoes in this single day of fighting. Back on USS Smith, the tin can sailors are in the midst of chaos. They have no idea that the blaze on the ship's bow is about to ignite a Japanese torpedo. October 26, 1942. USS Enterprise and her task force are in the fight of their lives near the Santa Cruz Islands. Just off the Enterprise's port side, destroyer escort USS Smith has just been hit by an enemy suicide plane and is engulfed by fire. But her sailors have no idea that a live torpedo is about to detonate. Flames and smoke engulf the bow and bridge as shrapnel flies across her decks. Smith is an inferno. Her bridge is evacuated as the damage control party struggles to battle the blaze. If the fire reaches the ready ammo supply, dozens more sailors might be killed by the explosion of hot ordnance. Her captain must act fast if he's going to save his battered ship. The inflamed destroyer is out of control, ready to be picked off by the next enemy plane or submarine. The captain of the Smith directs the ship right into the massive wake of battleship South Dakota. The spray that the giant ship sends up showers over the flames. Through smoke, fire, and a sea of shot and shell, the crew of USS Smith reclaimed their ship and rejoined the fight.
Well, it's actually pretty remarkable. Through all that confusion and the fire and the firefighting, you know, and just the human death toll in itself, they had to put all that behind them and focus on what they really needed to do. Which, first of all, they had to save the ship before they could save themselves.
Despite the loss of nearly 60 men, the USS Smith continues to defend the Enterprise.
For the ship and the crew to focus on what was at hand and then just go right back to fighting, tells a lot about their training, their discipline, and their overall American spirit.
The surviving gunners of USS Smith blast the hell out of the retreating airplanes. The Kate torpedo planes fail to get a solid hit on Enterprise. The surviving pilots pull out of the maelstrom of flak and make their escape.
They should have come 25 minutes earlier and coordinated their attack with the dive bombers. But, you know, the lucky little E, everything's turned out all right for us.
But the Kates have one final obstacle. Swede Vedasa, Flash Gordon, and the Wildcats of Fighting Squadron 10. The plane that Swede and Flash used to defend Enterprise is the F-4F Wildcat, a single-engine fighter. It's armed with as many as 6 50-caliber machine guns, capable of firing 1,400 rounds of ammo, and has a top speed of 320 miles per hour. From the cockpit of his Wildcat, Flash Gordon has witnessed the horrific attacks on Hornet and Enterprise. Now it's payback time. Gordon sees a torpedo plane coming back from Enterprise, but he's out of ammo. His only choice is to charge the enemy plane head-on. It's a dangerous game of chicken. And it's the Japanese pilot that blinks first. Gordon drives the Japanese flyer right into the water.
So I claimed him without any ammo. Someone said, were you ever scared? I didn't know, I was just mad.
Since the suicide attack on USS Smith, Swede Vedasa has flown outside the umbrella of American flak. With only a few bursts left in the belts of his machine guns, he carefully picks his next target. Swede selects a torpedo plane flying low to the water and fires the very last of his ammunition. It's his 7th and final kill of the day, his 12th in the war. In 6 months of carrier air combat in the Pacific, he's already a double ace.
5 is an ace. It's tough enough to get 1. So for a pilot to go out and nab 7, it sounds like he's in the groove there.
In 1 hour of combat, the steady nerves of the men of Enterprise have been put to the test. Though battered and bleeding, the Big E is still afloat. It's a strange reality of war, but on a ship this large, fierce combat can be raging on deck, while for men like radar technician Roy Blood, assigned to stations deep within the ship, it's just the boredom of waiting. During a lull in battle, Blood offers his comrades an unusual treat.
And we're all lying on our bellies in the shop in various places, under workbenches and whatever, for protection. And I can remember saying, anybody care for a black olive? And there was no response. So I repeated it. I got a can of black olives. Anybody want some? Speak up. This warrant officer, Stewart, who was more or less in charge of our group, he said, Roy, he said, that's something of the damnedest thing to say after a battle. Who could think of black olives at a time like that?
10 miles away, the painful ordeal aboard USS Hornet continues. She's already been savaged by direct hits with 550-pound bombs and 2 torpedoes, and she's dead in the water.
I couldn't count the number of bomb hits and torpedo hits she took, but she took a terrible beating. She was already listing very much to starboard. So, and that's when our skipper decided that he would go and help Hornet.
Northampton has fought beside Hornet all morning. Now her role is one of rescue.
They dropped a towing wire to us. It's about a 2.5-inch steel towing wire.
The after-gun mount on Northampton becomes a giant ball hitch. Amazingly, she begins to tow the massive carrier at an impressive 5 knots. Captain Mason is now certain that his ship can be saved. All he needs is time. But on Enterprise, Admiral Kincaid wrestles with what to do next. If the Japanese hit the Big E again, she may not make it, and the U.S. will have no more battle-ready carriers to take her place in the Pacific. Admiral Kincaid has 2 options. He can stay and continue the battle, risking Enterprise and the lives of everyone aboard, or he can abandon